Hi, good morning to everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me to this important panel. Let me briefly present through my logos that you will see in the slide. I am Studiosa Senior of the Studium Patavinum. I work at the Department of Information Engineering, where I teach 2 courses of artificial intelligence. I am board member of the Elena Cornaro Center on Gender Studies, and I belong to the Council of the Italian Association of Women and Science. Uh, the title of my talk is Gender Fairness of Machine Learning Techniques. Let's start with an almost obvious question. Is there gender equality in science? No one would doubt that women and men have the same rights. It's a principle. Women and men do the same job. Are they judged in the same way? Do they have the same careers? The number about gender equality in science speak for themselves and show a strong underrepresentation of women in universities. However, the tradition of the masculine as universal neutral, it is obsolete. Gender in the scientific framework, but not only in the artistic and cultural sphere, are now effectively two with good advantages for all. The University of Padova participated as partner in the European project FP7 Gender Time, where time stands for transferring, implementing, monitoring equality. And I was the scientific responsible of the UNIPD team. In this framework, we developed a gender equality index. The collection of data was based on a conceptual model of 7 domains: work, money, you see here, time, knowledge, space, health, and power. For each domain, we calculated the corresponding value of a simple indicator IWD and IMD, and we calculated their ratio ID. If this ratio is equal to 1, this means that we have gender equality. If is less than 1, there is gender gap against women, otherwise the opposite. In the domain of power, the indicator we calculated in our university had the value 0.699, thus measuring a gender gap against women of 30.1% in the domain of power, to demonstrate that women have very low power in academia. Going to ICT domain, I show you the ICT gender equality paradox as published in the UNESCO publication for the Equal Skill Collection in 2019, entitled I'd Blush If I Could. These graphs show on the Ashisa the gender equality score of different countries in the world as supplied by the World Economic Forum. And on the ordinate, the percentage of graduates in ICT who are females. As you see, gender equality paradox refers to the surprising lack of a direct relationship between gender equality levels and the proportion of female students portion in ICT. For the European country, and other developed countries appearing on the lower right-hand side in the chart in blue, higher gender equality level is not associated with higher female participation in ICT program, as you can see. In fact, in this European country, female participation is lower than 1 in 4. For the group of Arab states appearing on the upper left-hand side of the chart, there is a higher female participation in ICT programs. This is why we call it paradox. And Azerbaijan, in a good position, more than 40% are women studying in ICT. To understand well this behavior is complicated, but it is, in my opinion, very interesting, this ICT gender equality paradox. In ICT in general, in European, but also in the United States, there are less and less women. Women that earn computer science degrees in the United States were about 28 in 1995, 25 in 2004, and 80 in 2014. It's decreasing number. And in Europe, across 35 European countries, fewer than 1 in 5 computer graduates are women, meaning about 20%. And in Italy, the data are similar. It seems that the stereotypical image of the computer science student is that of the nerd. Nerd means a young man with a not particularly handsome physique, with a notable obsession for new technologies and computer and for little else. And young women don't identify them with this model and they choose other paths. Don't study informatics and computer science. But let's go to the approach to fix the knowledge. Fix the knowledge is the approach to which we would like to incorporate the gender dimension into all knowledge that is produced and to use it. To include the gender dimension in the content of science and technology, and particularly in the content of AI and robotics, we raised 2 questions. One, how can a newly gendered science be developed taking into account the gender dimension? A formal reflection is needed. The second question is, are the tools, algorithms, technologies, and devices that AI develops and robotics use really gender neutral? How we can redesign the scientific theories? The pinking method, what is called the pinking method, that is the stereotypical feminization of products, is not sufficient. To produce a new gender innovation in all fields of science, it is necessary to radically change the assumption, to formulate a new scientific question, new method and research model. We have demonstrated this using the logical argumentation rules. The main expert of gender innovation in the world is Londa Schwinger of Stanford University. And in the website, there are many case studies, starting from the pregnant crash test dummies to machine translation, from heart disease in women to osteoporosis research in men, from assistive technology for the elderly to urban transport plan. But before analyzing the problem of algorithms of AI, we define briefly, let's briefly give some definition about AI. AI is a scientific discipline that aims to create machines that show behavior that would be called intelligent if seen in a human being. AI is not science fiction, is as we know well, already in our life. But how to guide a machine to solve a problem? We can have the approach of logical reasoning, and we tell it the steps to be taken to solve the problem. And the other approach, the other path, is that of machine learning. We give example of problem solution, and we provide method needed to generalize. So the general architecture of AI is composed by two main components, machine learning and reasoning. So, and for reasoning, we intend knowledge representation, temporal reasoning, reasoning with uncertainty, non-monotonic logic, and so on. And for machine learning, we intend techniques that allow an AI system to learn how to solve a problem that cannot be specified precisely, or whose solution method can be described by symbolic reasoning rule. The system is trained with a lot of examples of input-out behavior, and so it learns to generalize, and it's able to process input different from that of the training set. It represents a very powerful classification system to be used in different contexts. And for this, it is the approach that now is widespread for many applications. But the question we put is, are the tools, algorithms, technologies, and devices that AI develop gender neutral? This question is even more important now, since AI and computer science is often confused with the tools developed. Studies in the field of machine learning show that this kind of algorithms can upload the gender bias present in the society. So we have to speak of biased machine learning, not of biased AI, as often happens. This is the reason why I show you the architecture, the general architecture of this discipline. The problem arises since little attention is paid to how data are collected, processed, and organized. Joshua Bencho from Montreal University told this: AI can amplify discrimination and biases, such as gender and racial discrimination, because those are present in the data the technology is trained on, reflecting people's behavior. In other words, should we let the data speak for itself? No, evidently. Looking at the relationship between AI and diversity. Women comprise 15% of AI research staff at Facebook and only 10% at Google last year. But I think that the data are not so much changed. Is not much better in academia. 18% of authors at leading conferences are women, and more than 80% of AI professors are male. For Black workers, the picture is worse. So the diversity problem is not just about women. It is about gender, race, and fundamentally about power. The asymmetry of power is ripe for abuse. So bias is not in our data set. It is in our conference and communities. Is a cultural problem. Let's go to one of the most used applications of machine learning, face recognition. Increasingly used, but often insufficient for the proper recognition of people of different gender and races. There is an article of an MIT Media Lab researcher, Joy Badaloni, entitled "Facial Recognition is Accurate if You Are a White Guy." And here are reported the values of average accuracy for recognize a lighter male, a lighter female, a darker male, a darker female. As you can see, there is a decreasing percentage. Since AI software is only as smart as the data used to train it. If there are many more white men than black women in the system, it will be worse at identifying the black women. So. But good news, recently there has been a lot of policy changes for facial recognition. IBM quits the facial recognition business. It will no longer sell general purpose facial recognition technology. The company opposes using technology for mass surveillance, racial profiling, and violation of human rights. The chief executive, Arvind Krishna, wrote, "The vendors and users of AI systems have a shared responsibility to ensure that AI is tested for bias, particularly when used in the law enforcement." This for IBM, and Amazon also has stopped the police use its facial recognition technology, but not only. Amazon also had developed a machine learning system for doing recruitment, automatically recruitment. But the system was trained to vet applicants by observing pattern in CV submitted to the company over 10 years period. Most came from men, and so the automatic recruitment tool prefer male candidates. And now they stopped this system. So, a first conclusion about fairness of these algorithms. The first conclusion is that the blind application of machine learning technique algorithms can lead to a stronger reinforcement of existing social and gender bias. And when we use tools and algorithms from the bottom-up paradigm of machine learning, we must analyze if the knowledge used to train the system includes also all the bias about gender and ethnicity present in society. But new methods exist of dividing the data set and have to be studied and found in order to develop a responsible gender research innovation. In the last UNESCO report of 2020, there is this statement of Joy Bulamwini: failures are ultimately human failures that reflect the priorities, values, and limitations of those who hold the power to shape technology. We must work to redistribute power in the design, development, deployment, and governance of AI if we hope to realize the potential of this powerful advancement and attend of its perils. This is in this report, in the chapter titled "Frame the Landscape of Gender Equality in AI." But what is important is that we all researchers want to develop a trustworthy AI. And to do this, transparency and explainability are two central keywords to be adopted. A final point is about voice assistant. Most leading voice assistants are female. Alexa, Cortana, Siri. Companies justify their decision on the basis of academic research, but also another point is that 90% of their programmers are white males. It seems that people like the sound of a male voice when is making authoritative statement, but a female voice when it's being helpful. Um, a prediction can be people will have more conversation with digital assistant than with their spouse. So it's important to study this problem. Virtual assistants are being designed to be gentle and sympathetic, tolerant to the point that, subjected to a vulgar appellation, Alexa reacted kindly. I would blush if I could, and this is the title of the UNESCO report of last year on this subject. Now the answer has been changed, the answer of Alexa. Um, this fact is likely to perpetuate undesirable and maybe unconscious cultural stereotype. A virtual assistant should be helpful and competent rather than referential. So, concluding about challenges and good practice, as suggested in the last report of UNESCO on artificial intelligence and gender equality, there are three main issues. To overcome the built-in gender bias found in AI device, dataset, and algorithms, to improve the global representation of women in technical roles and in boardroom in the technology sector, and to create robust and gender-inclusive AI principle guidelines and codes of ethics within the industry and also in academia. Thanks for your attention. Here are some links to interesting website, and here are some references. Thank you.